Welcome to day 2 of Retail Summit. We are continuing the live virtual portion today. So if you missed any of yesterday's talks, we've recorded everything and we'll upload it to our YouTube and on this site. So make sure that you're on the mailing list to be notified when these recordings are uploaded. So also you are on retail.sca.coffee right now. Which is a resource library as well, curated with coffee retail businesses in mind. So you'll see articles, reports, things, static documents that you could come back and find in the future, and also all of the videos here with retail businesses in mind. So yesterday, the live portion, we talked a lot about the business of coffee. We started with some practical tips and tools to use when planning a business. We had a panel discussion that was focused on relationships with staff, internal structures, systems, and culture. We also talked with a retail expert about the challenges of engaging with customers in meaningful ways. And innovations and trends we also looked at with the podcast crew and talking about just the different innovations in the beverage market. And then we also had a talk on investing in retail businesses from financial experts. And then we capped the day off with a deep dive into marketing and marketing plans. So these 2 days of Coffee Retail Summit and the Resource Hub were made possible with the support of our title sponsor, Pacific Foods Barista Series, our lead sponsors, BWT, San Remo, Brewista, and Baratza, and supporting sponsors, Nutrimilk and La Marzocco. So thank you so much to our sponsors. This couldn't be possible without you. So we begin today with a presentation on branding, how to think about the voice of your business, your purpose, positioning, and customer loyalty. I'm really honored to introduce our next speaker, our first speaker of the day, a friend and former colleague of mine at SCAA, Israel Serna, who is the digital marketing advisor and independent consultant. Israel is a digital native. He has spent the last 15 years working in various roles within the public and private sector across various industries. He's presented at hundreds of industry conferences on topics related to e-commerce, email marketing, loyalty, and customer retention strategy, and overall brand development. He will be joined later in the presentation by Chérmelle Edwards, founder of The Coffeetographer, an independent webzine. She's a writer, storyteller, cultural strategist. Chérmelle has traveled the world on commission to document coffee origins, fashion industry, and broad cultural insights for a variety of brands. So first, we have Israel. Welcome, Israel, and I will hand it off to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Heather. Can you just confirm that my slides are showing correctly? Just want to make sure that I'm doing everything right.
Yes, we see them. Got it.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are joining us today. And welcome to Beyond Your Logo, creating and cultivating a loyal customer. Before I begin, I did want to thank the Specialty Coffee Association for hosting us today. Once again, my name is Israel Serna, and I'm joining you virtually from my home office in West Hollywood, California. It's a true pleasure to be with you this morning. As Heather mentioned, I did form part of the SCA's marketing team back in 2012, where I had the opportunity to work with and work on marketing initiatives for the annual expo, new product competition. I dabbled into the barista camps and barista competitions as well, and also had the opportunity to work with the Roasters Guild Retreat on their summits. During this time, I learned so much about the specialty coffee industry and really learned to love and appreciate the entire seed to cup process. I'm excited to be here today because in many ways, I get to merge my marketing background, my specialty coffee background, and my love for small businesses all in one session. As someone who takes pride in staying on top of marketing and technology trends, pop culture news, and I'm always on the hunt for new coffee experience, I feel very fortunate to be presenting my findings in this presentation. So let's review the agenda for today. Now, while there are many ways to go about today's topic, I thought it would be a good idea to break it down into 3 sections before we invite our guest speaker on. We'll start off by going through a quick review of the differences between branding and marketing. This will allow us to set the foundation and for us to use the same terminology for our discussion around branding with purpose. Then I'll talk about the customer journey and discuss with you the new age of loyalty. The objective here is to share with you strategies and tips for attracting and cultivating your loyal customer base. And lastly, we'll have our special guest, Chérmelle Edwards from The Coffeetographer, to join us and talk to us about insights and trends that she is seeing in the specialty coffee world. So let's get started. Let's talk about branding and how it differentiates from marketing. While both are critical to the success of your business, we'll learn how both of them take on different tactics and approaches. It is said that marketing is for businesses while branding is for clients. In one instance, branding can be seen as the way you portray yourself to your customers, the way you talk about your brand, the way you position your brand. And in this case, branding in this instance is not a push, but a pull tactic. Furthermore, branding is the truth, the reputation, and the value a small business's images and ethics and craftsmanship. It is also the communication of characteristics and attributes that clarify what your particular brand is and isn't. On the other hand, marketing is the act of promoting and selling. It's how your message gets out via a set of processes and tools promoting your business. This can include SEO, social media, PPC ads, mobile, and traditional promotional methods and tools. An example that I could use to further clarify the difference is this. Let's assume we're talking about a roaster retailer versus a roaster wholesaler. Both offer a similar product, but have different objectives. In this particular instance, a roaster retailer wants to offer quality coffee to as many people as possible. They would position their brand messaging as such and rely heavily on marketing tactics to get the word out on their business to get people to buy. A wholesale roaster, on the other hand, wants to set their brand apart by being particular with which vendors they want to work with. In this case, they want to be known as an exclusive brand that is only served at Michelin star restaurants. This exclusivity can help them stand out from their competition by offering a unique offering that can only be experienced at particular destinations. As you can see, while both brands are selling the same product, their brand and marketing tactics are totally different. One other way to remember the difference is to look at branding as a strategic initiative and marketing as a tactical initiative. Let's dive a little deeper into what this means. As you can see in this Venn diagram, branding is much more than just your logo. It also includes other aspects like brand guidelines, brand identity, and visual style. Branding can also go into deeper aspects like your brand purpose, customer expectation, your reputation, which is all vital to your business. While marketing is a set of processes and tools used to promote your business. Marketing in this case can be seen as a sales-driven tactic which stands behind your branding. For those that attended Dr. Ross's marketing session yesterday, you heard him cover this in his presentation. Now, when we align the different tactics, you do see that there is a bit of an overlap when talking about your message and your value proposition. For the sake of it, since we're here, let's take a look at an example of a brand campaign that is leveraging both tactics and, in my opinion, doing a great job with it. In this particular example, we're looking at a couple of social media messages from the brand Onyx Coffee, where they're leveraging user-generated content to push out a very unique message. From a branding perspective, the brand is strategically trying to pull in a very specific audience with this marketing tactic. They are leveraging user-generated content or reviews, in this case, to showcase the stamp of approval that they've received from these notable media brands. I believe this message and these campaigns are very powerful and can hit on the emotions of an existing client as well as a new customer. Let me explain what I mean. For an existing buyer, a message like this could provide validation and a sense of pride to be affiliated with this brand. Both media companies carry a lot of weight and significance to some people. It may give an existing customer a sense of joy or pride knowing that they're part of the subscription club and that they already know who this brand is. Again, there is a sense of validation that comes with this messaging. From a potential buyer perspective, a message like this could inspire them to buy because they want to feel like they want to be a part of the club. For both media companies in this case, they, like I mentioned, they carry a lot of weight and significance, which may influence a potential buyer to take their word for it and subscribe and buy their coffee. This, again, is a good example of when branding and marketing merge, and a good example of getting customers to feel like they are part of something more than just buying your product. Let's talk a little bit more about what that means. So branding with the purpose is essentially a brand's reason for being beyond making money. It's important to note and to not confuse this with brand promise. A brand promise may give the buyer an idea of what to expect from the product or service, but branding with purpose goes way beyond that. Let's take a closer look. Branding with purpose allows you to connect with consumers on a more emotional level. Likewise, brand purpose isn't the same as social purpose, though there are many similarities. To clarify this some more, branding with purpose can be product-led or experience-based initiatives, which can help the brand achieve business success and benefit society simultaneously. Here are some key advantages to having or conducting branding with purpose. For one, your brand purpose can add a value not just to the lives of customers, but to the society as a whole. Branding with purpose can also help build a more emotional relationship between a brand and its consumer, which in turn can help to boost sales as well as loyalty. It can also help differentiate you by having a unique brand differentiator, just like the roaster wholesaler who wants to remain a unique and exclusive brand. So the question here is, what is your brand purpose? Let's break down the different segments and examples so that way you can think about what this could mean for your business. So the question that I'll start with is your brand purpose driven by emotional connections? Are you looking to offer exclusivity and a sense of belonging to your customers? Does your brand purpose add value, not just to the lives of customers, but to society as a whole? Is your brand purpose experience-led? This is the second piece. Believe it or not, packaging and unpackaging videos are a thing these days. People are traveling also far to experience a unique location or destination. Pop-ups and capsule collections are also a really good draw, and we've seen a lot of brands have success with this. And lastly, the question is your brand purpose product-led? Are you offering merchandise that's only accessible at your shop or your online store? Are you a brand that is offering a subscription? I've seen brands who've introduced unique products like cold brew, matcha lattes, lavender lattes, or even their own house-made almond milk to their menu, which has really drawn a unique customer. Remember that those unique offerings can be a thing that you are known for. And remember that a unique brand purpose can differentiate your brand from competitors. So now that we've done the work of understanding what branding is and positioning our brand to be purposeful, let's now talk about our customers. The important next step is ensuring that our brand messaging and our brand purpose is resonating with our customer base and that we're doing what we can to cultivate a loyal following or a loyal customer. Let's take a look at the different types of loyalty and loyalty customers that exist. To start, you've got the rational consumer, who is transaction-driven and only really interested in getting that 10th punch card on their loyalty card to get that 11th coffee for free. These folks have no problem having a transactional relationship with you. Airlines also come to mind when you think about rational consumer. Then you've got your consumers who are loyal to you out of convenience. Your shop may just be conveniently located next to their place of work. So you are a convenience to them, okay? And therefore, they are loyal to you because of that. And then you've got your emotional invested buyer who is sold on who you are as a brand and what you represent. In this case, you may represent their lifestyle or product that they want to be affiliated with. The emotional invested buyers or consumers in this case have forced us to look at loyalty different and what is now known in the industry as the new age of loyalty. Let's talk about that next. New age of loyalty is a reimagined version of what a typical loyalty program provides or what a typical loyalty customer looks like. Most of us think of an airline or a credit card when we think of a loyalty program or a loyalty person, right? These earn and burn programs that offer punch cards or point systems are really only transaction-based and no longer enough. New age of loyalty forces us to prioritize the customer's needs first. It's about them, not about us. So the question brands should be asking of themselves next are, what needs is your brand looking to solve? Are you trying to help a customer, for example, become the best home barista? Are you trying to introduce the best and the easiest home brewer around? Or are you looking to provide a fast and easy way for consumers to get coffee supplies at home? So these are just some of the questions and some of the things you should be asking yourself in terms of what you're looking to solve for the customer. And finally, new age of loyalty has us considering the emotional connection we have with our customers. When it comes to leading with emotion, remember that people today are buying on emotions, which are largely driven by experiences. When someone subscribes to your coffee subscription program, for example, they're not just buying it because they need coffee, but rather they're buying into the totality of their experience with your brand. Perhaps they are driven with by your brand's mission, by your brand's packaging. I've done this, or by what they're hearing and reading from an industry influencer. There are many variables to consider here, so why don't we take a look at a Bain & Company report that looks at the psychology behind consumer behavior. In 2019, Bain & Company conducted a report on consumer psychology and identified 30 elements of value that consumers look for when choosing a product or service. The report outlined the 30 elements in 4 categories and came up with the elements of pyramid, which you're seeing on your screen now. The 30 elements fall into 4 categories, which are social impact, life-changing, emotional, and lastly, functional, which across all industries tends to be the area that most businesses focus on the most. And that makes sense. That makes sense that logical is at the priority of many businesses because you want to make sure that the product or services you provide hit the mark when it comes to functionality. However, for us to connect with consumers on a more emotional level, we need to make sure we are hitting more of the areas towards the top of the pyramid. So for example, let's talk about a few brand examples. For a brand like Patagonia, they've done a really good job at tapping into many of the emotional and life-changing values of their customers by coming out with several campaigns and messages regarding their stance on climate change. They've done print ads, TV, and social media ads that have allowed them to reach customers with similar values. In return, they've built a tribe of loyal followers who stick to the brand because of these values and align and want to be affiliated with them. So as we can see on the screen, this is in the life-changing portion of the pyramid. This is where Patagonia, the brand, is really focusing a lot of their marketing efforts and brand messaging around. Let's talk about another example. Let's talk about Leica cameras. We all know that these are very expensive cameras and carry a lot of prestige and have become known as a camera that many professional photographers and famous photographers have used in the past. So if you talk to an owner of this camera, they're going to talk about the quality of the product and the pictures it takes, right? So a photographer who's invested in a Leica camera will, be able to fulfill some underlining life-changing elements through self-actualization. So now we're tapping again into this life-changing section. So what happens here is for a camera owner, a Leica camera owner, they are now going to feel like they're buying into this lifestyle, this brand identity, and in return, to them, the value is that they can be affiliated with the camera that has been used by professional photographers across the world. Now, an industry example could be a coffee subscription. The elements of value in this case that you are providing can fall under functionality because you're providing a convenient way for the consumer to get coffee. You could also be providing access to a rare and specialty coffee source varietal. Or you can be tapping into the life-changing elements because they want to be affiliated with your brand, okay? By the way, this pyramid can also be used for B2B brands. It's not just for B2C brands. So what does this all mean? And what are the takeaways from brands that are looking to invest more in customer retention, engagement, and loyalty initiatives? A study by Capgemini showed that customers with high emotional engagement are more likely to have strong brand affinity compared to those with low engagement. Those with less emotional engagement fall under the rational and behavioral models, making decisions based on logic and routine over emotion. And so what can an emotional investment and focusing on the values that matter most to your customers mean for your overall business? Well, when done right, it can help solve and provide solutions to some of your biggest pain points. For example, it can help you with your margins for retaining your existing customer base. It can help you with repeat purchasing, your average order value or your lifetime value of your customer. It could also, especially for those brands that have high ticket items or high ticket priced items like espresso machines or machines of that nature, it can help you stay engaged with customers in between purchases, because we know we're not buying espresso machines every day or every month or once a year. We're buying them maybe every 5 to 10 years. So tapping into some of these tactics can help you keep engagement with some of those customers. It could also help you incentivize customers without discounting. And that's sometimes a default thing that we think about with loyalty or with loyalty programs, is we feel like we need to provide a discount to our loyal customers. And that's far from the truth. As you've seen, there are many other tactics that you can take to reward your customers that won't hit your bottom line. And lastly, it can help you to reward your customers for referrals, for ratings, for content that they're providing, for user-generated reviews. And so this is just a look at, when done right, how this can help your overall business. So with that in mind, I do want to now move our conversation over to our conversation with Chermelle. So if I can have Chermelle join me on camera.
Good morning.
Hi, Chermelle.
How are you?
Good, good. I'm
Good
so
to
happy.
be here.
I'm so excited that you're able to join us for the second half. As Heather mentioned, you're the co-founder of The Coffeetographer, an independent webzine with a very unique social and cultural um, element tied to it. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit more about your work with your webzine?
Sure. First, thank you for having me and inviting me onto your panel. And thank you to the Specialty Coffee Association for having me. Um, Basically, I run a webzine called The Coffeetographer, which is also my namesake. And I document coffee culture. My goal is to look at coffee, specialty coffee, through the lens of pop culture, right? Things that contribute to our lifestyle, things that we're interested in, things that matter to us. And so my goal is to cartographize those things, to be able to look back 2 or 3 years ago and see what people were talking about in fashion, or what they were talking about in design or architecture, or what they were talking about in roasting or just coffee itself. So takes me all around the world, and I love that.
That's excellent. So when you describe your work, you mentioned that it gives you the opportunity to experience culture through coffee. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's great and that you're here and able to share your perspective from both a consumer and a specialty coffee insider perspective. So I thought what we would do is chat for a few minutes on trends you're seeing and
Mm-hmm.
insights you've gained being out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And I am being intentional when I say field here because when I think about the work that you do, I actually think of your work as more of like a cultural anthropology
Mm-hmm.
perspective. You know, you in many ways document, take notes, analyze, and then come back to us with your findings. And so I was intentional when I said field because I feel like that's what you do.
It's a big part of
uh,
what I do.
it's a big part of what you do, exactly. So let's start by asking you this. So I know that prior to the shutdown, you had been traveling the world in search of experiencing culture, the coffee culture in different parts of the globe.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you can, tell us a little bit about what you saw then and any experiences that stood out.
Okay. I saw a lot, so I'm going to try to keep it brief and intentional. I even have notes. Yeah, so I was actually in Paris for Fashion Month, and had hopped over to Lisbon and was coming back and got caught in COVID. So I was had to quarantine for like 2 weeks, and so I've been in LA ever since, even though I grew up here. And what I saw a lot there before COVID hit was just a lot of, boutique coffee shops and customization. And I saw a lot of international roasters. And I saw a lot of people waiting, like
Mhm.
waiting for something good. And I don't mind waiting, I don't mind being patient. But especially like in Paris and Lisbon and European cities, spaces are really small. So, kind of the way that we've had to adjust here in the States to the pandemic with like little to nobody in a shop. I feel like in Europe, a lot of shops are used to dealing with like 6 seats, 8 seats, that kind of thing. It's really interesting because sometime last year I was thinking about the coffees that I had tasted as I was being in quarantine. And I was trying to think about like what was the best coffee that I tasted, but also what was like the best experience that I had, because they're different. Like you can have a great coffee shop experience, but the coffee can be okay. And
Mhm.
you can have a great coffee, but the coffee shop experience can be okay.
Mhm.
And I went to a shop called Dreamin' Man, and there's a man named Yuchiro who runs it, and he used to run Two Boots, which was a pretty famous coffee shop in Paris and Marais, and a lot of people went there, maybe like 6 seats and something like that, and crates outside, and you would sit and wait for your coffee. So he left there and started Dreamin' Man. And what was awesome was that like maybe there's 6 seats there as well. He's behind the bar all the time. But you walk in there and you feel like you're walking into this person, right? Like
Mhm.
his shop is his soul on display. And I had a coffee that was phenomenal. I almost didn't believe how great it was until I came back like a second and a third time during Fashion Week, and the coffee was just brilliant. And so when I inquired about the coffee, he told me that it was from Prologue, and I never heard of them before. And that caused me to like research them, look for them, and eventually order their coffee from Denmark while I was here in the pandemic. And there was something about the experience, but also the quality of the way the coffee was made. You know, it was like this creamy body, peach fruit bombs, and this person from behind the counter serving it with like every ounce of who they were. So it was a whole situation. I was feeling it. You know what I'm saying?
That's amazing. Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah, and it's true. I mean, I like what you said. I mean, oftentimes, you can be providing really good quality coffee, but just maybe not the experience that the customer has may not be, up to par as well. So I think it's important that brands do consider the totality of the experience, right?
Yeah.
As you saw on the pyramid, oftentimes we get so stuck in the functional piece of our product or service. In this case, somebody can get really caught up in only providing quality coffee and forget about how this is going to be, perceived, or how this is going to be drank, in what environment. So I think that's a really good something important that you said. Great. So is there so in a separate conversation with you, I also learned that you're getting back into the cafe scene here in the United States.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what you're seeing and hearing. You had mentioned that you were going on a coffee sprint a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
So can you share with us maybe one or two trends that you're seeing, and particularly we're talking about the United States here, but that you're seeing?
Right. Yeah, I just want to preface that, when the pandemic hit, I just stopped going to coffee shops altogether. Like, we really took it really seriously, but it's tricky, So over the past year, I've had these like out weeks where I go and I'll go to like 40 shops in a week. And I did that like in, I think it was October, end of November. And then I just did it like 2 weeks ago. And what's interesting about that is that on the one hand, you get to have so many experiences back to back that it's easy to kind of like parallel them and see like what's happening, what's not happening, what's different, what's not. And so at first when I got back, I was seeing like just cafes adjusting, right? Just trying to figure out how to do a cafe in COVID, how to have like your glass up or have a mask, like using apps and people ordering from apps and coming up with their order from an app versus like the person walking up. How do you differentiate that and monitor that queue? Then there was also like the reduction of menus. Like there were like menus in person and then menus online and then menus in the app. And sometimes they don't always line up. So how do you deal with that? And then I'm starting to see, or I've seen a lot of localism. So a lot of coffee shops are aligning with their founders or their community's passion points, right? Like maybe that's surfing, maybe that's clean water, maybe that is CSAs, maybe that is merchandise, you know what I mean? Maybe that is just community, maybe it's music, like whatever this organic, intrinsic thing that's a part of your lifestyle, your being. I'm seeing coffee shops take that and make that as a part of their brand, like not just in the walk up, but in their digital presence. So I'm associating with coffee shops primarily now digitally first. And then I'm associating with them physically. And I'm looking to see congruency. I'm looking to see like what's almost omnichannel. Like what am I getting from them socially that matches up? And what can I get from them physically when I go there that maybe I couldn't get from just scrolling a feed or reading their website or ordering their coffee and getting that coffee at home in a package with a postcard or a note. So a lot of localism, a lot of individualism, and what I kind of call like coffee and serve, or coffee and bikes, or coffee and lifestyle. I mean, these things aren't necessarily new, but I'm just seeing a lot more coffee shops embrace those things as a way to like bring people into who they are.
Yeah, no, you said, you mentioned Omnichannel, which, essentially now is like a subset of marketing and branding. But you're right. I think it's important for brands to know that The one thing you don't have control over is how somebody is going to learn about you and your brand. So it's important that whether that touch point is just walking down the street and stumbling upon your shop, or somebody forwarding you a post, or coming across an article about you. We don't have control over how people discover us, but what we do have control over is the experience that they get through all of those channels. So I think it's so great that you said omnichannel, because now we do have to think about all of the channels that we're in, and all of those, and what each of those is providing, right? Like you said,
Right.
in some cases you're interacting more with somebody online than you are physically because of the situation that we're in. So what does that look like, right?
Yeah, and we don't know, right? Like
Don't always don't know.
I don't always know, like, even though I'm a consumer, I'm also like a journalist, like documenting what I'm seeing. So I don't always know what I want, but I can feel it, right? So like sometimes I may not even be looking for a perfect coffee, but I'm looking for a great coffee and I want a really good experience. So it's like sometimes I get to a place and that coffee is so good at being who they are that now they're putting me onto something. They're tapping into something inside of me that I didn't know that I liked. And so now you got me, because I'm like, I want to see how else you're going to show me myself, appeal to me, Maybe I do love a cappuccino in the morning, or maybe I'm by the beach and I want an espresso, and your espresso is really good. You know what I mean? So it's like, there also has to be this idea of fluidity, and knowing that the better you as a brand know yourself, but also are malleable and you can pivot, the better you are able to like adjust to like being who you are, but also encompassing who your demographic is, right? Because if your demographic is, they wake up early and they're active and they're in a surf town, or it's sunny, like that's going to kind of fuel the character of who they are, and they're coming into your shops. So you have to kind of take that into consideration too. But the foundation always starts with like who you are.
Who
Like
you are
that's really important, because
at the core.
everyone's not going to necessarily align with that. And that's okay.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I think that the advantages that a lot of the smaller retailers or brands have is that they can be and act quicker and faster. So they have the opportunity to adapt. And we saw this, like you mentioned earlier, many businesses having to adapt quickly to how they were going to serve coffee, or how they were going to be able to provide an experience. And so
Totally.
that is a total advantage I feel like businesses have, is to, what I like to call test fast, fail fast, so that if it doesn't work, you can move on.
Right. And we were talking about that before, a little bit about, like the trends. That's one thing that I saw, because ironically, when you're still, you can feel a lot and you can see a lot. And that's what the pandemic has done for us. But that's also what being able to like be in a space, leave it, and think about it can do, as, for consumers. And so like, as far as trends, like here in LA in Chinatown, there's Endorphin, which is run by Jack. And, he kind of like creates this character where he speaks in the third person and he talks about himself as if he's not himself. And like, Jack is going to go do this, and Jack is going to deliver you coffee, and Jack has this map, and like, where are you on the map? And I can deliver you bottled coffee or bottled drinks. And it's like, now I'm like, I can't go see Jack in the coffee shop, right? But Jack can come to me. Jack can deliver the coffee that I want to me. And I thought that was super smart, super malleable in a pandemic, to become your own driver, bottle your coffees, get out of your shop because people aren't coming. And now you get to know where your customers are. You're delivering to their door. You know what they like. That's all this extra data that you also get. You know what I mean? And it's like, I would just wave through the gate and say like, hey, Jack, Mom and I, we thank you. Sit some of his coffee to some friends. And I just thought it was like a way to put yourself into your brand.
Oh my gosh.
And then there was one other one. I think there's another brand I never engaged with them in person, but I found them in the pandemic, and they're called No Free Coffee. And I got hooked because of Instagram. It was like, they never really showed coffee. It was more like their color palette. It was ideas about structure, architecture, environment, ideas, memes. And then it slowly morphed into like, hey, we're going to be popping up and we're going to be serving coffee. Then it went into like a little bit of that, and then like ideas about coffee, all in like their color palette. And then when they announced their first pop-up, I was like, Mom, we got to go. Like, we just have to go and support, first off. But I also want to see it, right? Like, so their pop-up was in Silver Lake at the Counterculture Training Center. And, Counterculture is a pretty, standard quality coffee. So we went, and when we got there, it was just like, it was a vibe. It was like all kind of culture. There was music. There was like a couple of merchandise. There were like hand stamped cups. There were logos. People were talking. We all had on masks. There were special coffees, and they've had a couple since then. And the one thing that I like about this brand is that they don't have a physical space. So that means that they're creating a brand just through the content that they're giving you on Instagram, but also they're applying a character, a message. And No Free Coffee is all about one of the founders having interactions with people who always wanted him to like come out for coffee. We'll buy your coffee, but they wanted to tap his brain. And he was like, I don't want your free coffee. Like, I'd
We've all
rather you
heard
just
that.
pay me, right?
Right.
Pay me for my service. I'll buy my own coffee. And so when he told me this at the pop-up, I was like, word. Like, I was
Yeah.
like, this is so real, especially if you're
Right.
a freelancer. But to name your brand after that, put that on all of your cups, your sweatshirts, your tote bags, your bottle glasses. And now people are not only engaging with your brand, they're wearing your mantra, they're living your philosophy. And so when you go to their profile, they even tell you like the coffee is cool, but it's the clothes that hit. So it lets you know like they're serious about coffee, but they kind of want to have like this cult following with you. Like, I told him in DM, I was like, what, you trying to just get me to come out and stand in the line so I can get like, the first 100 bottles of coffee or something? So not every brand is about merchandise, right? Not every brand is about a motto or a slogan. Like, I'm not saying that, but I think both of those brands knew who they were and what they could
Yeah.
do, and they moved in that direction, right?
Well, they're being intentional. I mean, there's no denying that, the messages that are being put out, the imagery, the it's super intentional, and it's thought out, it's and it's consistent too. When you go and study, like I have these last couple of days, from like just the marketing and branding perspective, it would, back in the days, you would have to pay an agency tons to like think
Yeah.
about this idea or to help you launch this idea, and here you have at your disposal the tools to
The
do it.
tools.
All you really need to do is have a really good strong sense for who you are and what you want to be, and then run with it. And I think that's so genius, and I have been diving into what they've been doing and really enjoying it.
Yeah.
But I did want to go back to Endorphins, right? That's the brand with
Yeah.
with
Endorphin.
Jack, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think it's so, I mean, I'm going to call it a silver lining in all of this. But also I'm going to, just say how great it was that, that Jack was so intentional about delivering the product himself. I've
Yeah.
seen other brands do this. And I think what you said is so powerful, because I think that oftentimes as business owners, we are welcoming our consumer in our door and, giving them an experience of what, who we are and what we want them to get out of our brand. But what a powerful, insight to be able to go and see probably where, how much your customers vary in terms of like
Yep.
lifestyle too. I think that's so cool and
And
so
to see
smart.
what they order, right? Like maybe you really love this drink that you're making, and that's cool. But maybe your audience really loves this other thing. And
Hmm.
now that you know that, it's like that can grow into your content strategy, right? Maybe you
Yeah,
show that a little bit more in your feed. Maybe you share
right.
recipes. Maybe you talk about it more. Maybe,
Yeah.
if you're moving into RTD, it becomes a part of your bottling menu. Like, there's
Hmm.
just so many ways to take that information. But it took like him saying, like, I'm willing to put myself out there. I'm willing to do this. And I've seen other shops, like, they have jug programs. People are walking in saying, like, can I just buy a jug? Because I may not be able to come back in tomorrow. or 2 days from now. It could last me for a couple of days. Yeah, it's really cool. Really
Yeah,
ingenious.
it's so true, right? Sometimes, we don't have control over what's going to be a hit or not. Sometimes it's unintentional, right? We become known for something. I mean, I'll just say it, like how early in the early wave of the third wave coffee, I mean, how many of us were traveling to Intelligentsia to literally get a photo of the tile? I mean,
Come on.
I'm sure that wasn't
Like, we're
intentional.
human. Yeah, let's be real. And I think like I think when we talk about like loyalty and brands, all that kind of stuff, and about feelings, I'm about feelings and being connected, we can't negate the idea of the power of social media and the power of visuals and why people may come to a place. Of course, they may be drawn in by your tile, right? Or your storefront, or your ceramics or whatever. But what's going to keep them? What's going to retain them? What's going to make them feel good? How are you responding to their DMs? How is your subscription program? How is your retention of your subscription program?
Yeah.
How is your customer engagement? Like, how do people feel when they come into your space or to your glass? Right? Like, there's a lot of touch points that
there are.
that
I
we
think
can't
also
afford to forget about anymore.
we cannot. And I think that's something really interesting too. For those brands that I think that found themselves during the pandemic, for example, getting new customers coming in or being discovered by new brands because now all of a sudden maybe you were more convenient or had the item that they needed. For those brands, now the work is really in how do you get that new customer to stick around? How do you retain them? How do you engage with them? Because that's really where the work is, right? We know that we spend a lot of money trying to do outreach and getting customers to come in. But oftentimes, we forget like that there's a strategy to retention, right? And sometimes we're so focused on the new that we may forget about our existing customers. So I think I love that you said that or that you brought that up.
Yeah, because customers are going to be loyal to more than one brand. Like,
True.
I see this myself, like there's brands that when the pandemic started that I didn't really engage with because I was always going into coffee shops. And then the engagement shifted when I had to start buying coffee myself. So it's a different engagement I have with the coffee brand online. And when I send my friends coffee and I ask them about like, how does it look? Send me a picture, show me. Because when I'm ordering coffee, I know it's like the coffee photographer is on it. And not that I think that's going to mean anything to someone packaging up my coffee, but sometimes I just like to see like what my friends get, if it's the same thing, you know what I mean? If it's packaged the same way.
Packaging is a thing. I mean, we've seen it in the wine industry. We see it in the coffee industry,
Yeah.
that can be a motivator. And like I said in my presentation, packaging videos and unpackaging videos are a thing,
Yeah.
people are driven by that. So we're going to open it up for Q&A in a few, but my last question for you, Chermelle, is for you, like when it comes to like loyalty, and you've touched a little bit about that. Is there one thing that you think what you would want from a brand for them to win you over from that perspective?
I feel like what draws me is a feeling. And I know that's so subjective, but I think I'm also looking for authenticity for them, right? Like, I don't need them to be something that they're not. I don't need them to put on and be another brand. Just need them to be themselves. And if that is simpler than someone else, that's okay. Just do you and be you well, right? So it's like, understand your constraints, but you can still be creative with them, right? So I just think I'm just looking for authenticity and a good time, good coffee time.
And there's nothing wrong with being inspired by someone, but I think you're right. How do you take that and make that your own, or make it unique to you? So I love that you said that. So I'm going to check out the questions to see if there's any questions for us. We've got about 8 minutes, so you've got us both on. We'd love to hear from you. Let me just pull up and see if there's any questions. Okay, so there's a question here that says, what elements of the coffee retail brand experience have you missed the most because of lockdown restrictions?
You want me to answer, or you want to go? You
Sure,
want me
go
to
for it.
answer?
Yeah.
I miss sitting in a coffee shop. Just the act of being in a coffee shop. And I miss other humans making my coffee. I've gotten really intimate with my coffee routine by being at home, but I really enjoyed other people who do coffee excellently making coffee for me. So I miss that. And I also miss discovery, right? Like
Mm,
coffee shops are such an ecosystem of everything, of like a barista's music, of like someone walking in and wearing like, some really dope platforms or something, or like
yeah.
seeing an artist do their work, or just having a conversation, with
Yeah.
another human being. So I think that's what I miss, what I have missed the most.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to tell, or, to share with the audience that you and
Yep.
I actually met at a coffee shop.
Yes,
um,
we did.
I saw you,
Right?
doing your thing with your camera, and I actually was like so inspired by what you were doing, and I came up to you, and this was maybe like, I don't
And
know,
where do we meet? Like
9 years
downtown
ago.
LA, right?
It was
In the
downtown
Handsome
LA,
Roaster days.
Handsome Roaster Coffee. Um, so somebody's asking, can you talk about the difference between roasting your own coffee versus buying roasted coffee with focus on branding? Is there a preference in your opinion? So can you talk about the difference between roasting your own coffee, which is a hard thing to do? So
Right.
that's already a very niche market. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
possibly a bigger market after the pandemic, right? People
Right.
experimenting and wanting to take that on versus buying. Um, well,
Is
I mean,
that is that from the perspective of a coffee shop roasting your own coffee, or
I would
buying the
say
coffee
probably
to sell it?
from a consumer.
Oh, okay.
Can you talk to the difference between roasting your own coffee? Yeah. Versus buying roasted coffee with focus on branding. Well, I mean, I think that they provide two different experiences. I mean, I'll tell you that I take a lot of pride when I make somebody a cup of coffee and I'm hosting somebody. So I think that being able to roast my own coffee and being able to share that, I think is awesome. So I think that that's a very personal thing. And, obviously when you're buying into a coffee roaster's coffee, it's also an intimate thing, but I feel like, I don't know, it feels a little bit more personal.
Yeah. I think I'm going to answer this from the coffee shop perspective.
Okay.
Just in case the question is about like what I'm also seeing is a lot of like independent shops are moving into roasting their own. Like usually you would see a shop, maybe like a Go Get 'em or something, who has like their third or fourth or fifth, and they're going into roasting, right? Like private labeling or something, or being a multi roaster, and then they say, okay, we want to start roasting our own. And I'm starting to see like shops just have one shop and they're roasting their own, or they have two
Yes.
and then they start roasting their own. And I think that I think it's a challenge, because when people know that you carry a certain brand, they expect a certain profile or flavor, certain coffees to come in and out. And the ones that I think that have switched over to roasting their own, it's kind of like this seamless thing where maybe it's a private label, so you don't even know that it's someone else's coffee, but it's under their label, and they're allowing the customer to experience that, ask questions. Oh, I noticed something different with the roast today. What is it? And they can talk you through it. That's how I learned that coffee shops are now not carrying this brand. This is actually their own brand. But the whole time it's been underneath their own brand, like Hi-Fi Espresso in Hermosa Beach. I love them. They carry counterculture, but they're doing their own coffee now. So it's like sometimes I come in, it's theirs. Sometimes it's counterculture, or it could be somebody on guest roast. So I
Yes.
think that it's going to depend on like, if you want to get into roasting, if that's a passion of yours and you want to authentically pursue that and you're good at it. And I also think it's
Commit
like,
to it. Yeah, because you
commit to
can't you
it.
can't you can't just start and then all of a sudden it's like we're
Right.
no longer doing it. Yeah, absolutely. So
Right.
I think that's, so the way that you answer the question is actually the question. I misread it. So I think
Oh, it's
you're
okay.
right in that roasting your own versus carrying a multi-roaster. So somebody's asking, do you have any examples of co-branding or brand alignment that resonates with you? Trying to think here. Co-branding. Well, we see this a lot. I mean, a common one that we're seeing, and Chermelle, you spoke about this, is collaborating with a food truck or collaborating with another retailer to provide a multi-experience opportunity. You had mentioned, Chermelle, that you had been to a shop where they're now selling plants, for example.
Right. And that's like a big trend that we're seeing. Like everybody wants a plant. And it's like, that's cool, but like Commodity in Long Beach now, like they took out that wall that they had to separate like the store that was there before and their bar. And now they have a whole plant store. And then there's like Wolf's Brew in Long Beach. They have like this really cool curated room of plants. And down in Highland Park, like there's one coffee shop, they have like a little plant sale. So I think that the coffee and is a big part of that branding, right? Whether you have like another small business pop into your space or pop out because, we're not really in shops that much, or you find something that resonates with you and you say, okay, I want to put my name on that with you, or I want you to come in with me. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's a lot of that because that's how a lot of these like sub indies get their start. Even when they have multi-roaster shops, like you may have your main roaster and then you go to a place like Daydream, which is like my fave, and or one of my faves on West Coast actually, but they'll have like their Cad Cloud Espresso. Then they have Onyx, and then they have Manhattan coffee roasters, and they have a couple of things. And then even recently, Onyx, who's in your presentation, they just did a big collaboration with Everybody's Busy. She's out of Chicago. She's a woman. She's been doing her coffee thing as a pop-up for years. And she just did a collaboration with Onyx, and like her face is on the box, on their
That's cool.
brilliant box that just won that award. Excellent example, like co-branding.
That's excellent. Great. Yeah. Well, we are at the top of the hour, Chermelle. I can't thank you enough for joining me in the second half.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks to the SCA for
SCA.
having us as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much. That was really a great conversation, great content. So thank you for contributing. Okay, we're going to kick off with the next session just in a few. So it's called Tech and Retail, the New Normal. So just grab that second cup of coffee or third or fourth, whichever you're on, and we'll see you back here shortly. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.